welcome to Stingray Tom's Florida and another dip into the archive. In this video, I'll be taking a look at the humble but peculiar pelican and how it's related to Florida's tourism history. There's a pair of pelicans that are native to the state, the brown and the white. These are two of the 8 pelican species, and while there's only a small amount of variation, pelicans inhabit every continent other than Antarctica, and they range from the Arctic Circle to South Africa. They are one of the most interesting and successful birds with a worldwide estimated population of about 1.5 million. They're prevalent in Florida and are well known to many locals and tourists. Quite gregarious, they live up to the old adage that birds of a feather flock together, and due to their size, they're not all that flighty, so to speak, around humans. I'll get into their description in a bit, but I think we all know the pelican's defining characteristic. That massive pouch which appears to be able to hold as much as the carpet bag of Mary Poppins. They're one of the most identifiable birds anywhere, with even the two species being unmistakably different due to their color. Those are all good reasons to create this video, but there's another reason as to why I wanted to make it. In my archive of Florida tourism documents, which is nearly 10,000 items strong, I have a good number of postcards going back to the 1890s. One of the more common subjects for Florida postcards is its native animals, and for a number of years I have been struck by what I've thought was a surprising fact. That is, other than the alligator, the pelican is the most common animal on the state postcards. Gators are more popular, but that's understandable. No animal is more associated with the Sunshine State than the gator. It's exotic, unusual, nearly unique, dangerous, and remarkably common. As for the pelican, why should it be so remarkably popular? Well, I'll show you 60 pelican postcards which represent the years 1913 to 1990, as well as images from magazines and press photos, and my own photos. I'll share what the two species have in common and the surprising things that make them quite different. I'm also going to look at 3 additional fascinating pelican-related aspects that are unique to Florida, where and when I go to get the best photos of pelicans, and a special look at one peculiar and particular type of pelican postcard. By the way, here's a not-so-random question. What's the last dinosaur that's shown in the 1993 Jurassic Park movie? So let's take a look at Florida's pelicans, one of the state's favorite animals. As I said, there are 2 different pelicans in Florida. The white pelican, Pelicanus erythrorhynchos, meaning red-billed pelican. The term comes from Latin, pelicanus, which means pelican, and the Greek for red-billed, erythrorhynchos. The other is the brown pelican, Pelicanus occidentalis, which rather boringly means western pelican. The 2 pelicans look very much alike except for their coloration, but there's some significant differences. The first thing that's noticeable is their size. Brown pelicans are the smallest of pelicans, but they are still larger than most American birds. It's 3 to 5 feet or 1 to 1.5 meters long, with a wingspan of around 7 feet or over 2 meters, and they weigh up to 11 pounds or 5 kilograms. While this makes them larger than even bald eagles, they are smaller than their white cousins. It has a length of 4 to 6 feet or 1.8 meters and a wingspan that can reach 10 feet or 3 meters. Only the California condor has a larger wingspan in the U.S. They typically weigh 20 pounds with some reaching 30. That's between 9 and 13 kilograms, making them the heaviest bird living in Florida. Both pelicans are excellent flyers despite their weight and can soar for hours and hundreds of miles at a time. Like other large birds, they fly using thermals, rising air currents, to give them lift. While both are native to Florida, there are differences here as well. Browns are true seabirds and live by the coast throughout the state. They feed on saltwater fish, whether from the ocean or brackish estuaries and rivers. On the other hand, while whites can also be found near the ocean, they feed at freshwater locations and will fly significant distances to feed. The other main difference when it comes to Florida is that whites are snowbirds, since they migrate here from central Canada to spend their winters, as so many humans and other birds do. Browns are permanent residents and watch their cousins arrive in the state around November and return north by April to breed. By the time that white pelicans leave, browns have built nests and begun laying eggs. Their nests are built in mangroves and secluded thickets of vegetation, often on islands, while in Canada and parts of northern U.S., whites nest in shallow depressions on the ground. Both species nest in large colonies with upwards of several thousand birds located close together. Speaking of breeding, there's another thing that makes the white pelicans different from the browns. During that time, both genders develop a pronounced bump on the top of their large beaks. This growth is worn away by the end of the breeding season. Whites in Florida don't develop this bump, or horn as some call it, until they've migrated northward, but one can see them in captivity at locations such as SeaWorld and the Gulf area. Both pelicans are highly gregarious and live in flocks of both sexes throughout the year, though because they're migratory, it's not unusual for whites to be spotted by themselves on random lakes in Florida. This one stayed in the lake behind my house a couple of years ago. It was there for about a week, and even though it was the only pelican, it was comfortable with the locals, including herons, anhingas, wood storks, and ducks. The earliest fossil evidence we have on the origin of pelicans goes back 36 million years. Their nearest relative is the shoebill, a large gray bird native to Central Africa. While the shoebill has been classified with storks, genetic research has shown that it's in the order Pelecaniformes, along with pelicans and the more distant herons, egrets, and ibis. Shoebills are a captivating bird that are about the same size as white pelicans, though they're less than half the weight. In Florida, you can see a rather entertaining pair of them at Zoo Tampa. Without a doubt, the pelican's most defining characteristic is its pouch and the bill to which it's attached. The brown's bill is about a foot or 30 centimeters long, and the white's can reach 15 inches or up to 38 centimeters. Then there's the pouch, and yes, that's the scientific name, though some call it the gular pouch, since it's made up of that type of skin. Other birds, like frigates and cormorants, have similar pouches, but they use them in courtship. Gular is a Latin term for throat. It's also the source of the word gullet. By the way, Florida's Anole lizards have a similar feature they use for courtship and territorial disputes. It's a gular fold, though it's often called a dewlap. Both Florida pelicans have the same size pouch, which can hold about 3 gallons or 11 liters of water. When full, the pouch could weigh 25 pounds or 11 kilograms, double the weight of a brown pelican and equal to the weight of a white one. As you might guess, pelicans can't really fly without much baggage, but they don't need to. They simply push the water out while keeping the fish in. Considering they employ a bulk fishing method, it's not surprising that they catch anything from tiny minnows up to fish that can be 3 or more pounds each. The pouch isn't a storage device. Once a pelican removes the water, they tilt the head back and swallow the fish. Both pelicans eat about 4 pounds or nearly 2 kilograms of food every day. All that salt water going in and out of the brown pelican's pouch doesn't bother it much, since it has specialized salt glands that excrete the salt. While the bill and pouch are the same in all pelicans, the methods of fishing that our Florida pelicans employ is radically different from each other. Whites forage more like some ducks by swimming on the surface and dipping their body forward to scoop up prey. This is the way nearly all pelicans around the world fish. Their prey includes fish, crawfish, frogs, and even small water snakes. Their style is unhurried and relaxed. They feed in fresh water, and as such they don't have salt glands. Brown pelicans have much more flair, with their method also employed by the Peruvian pelican. Browns fly 70 feet or 21 meters above the water to get that classic bird's eye view. From there, they spot schools of fish swimming below the surface. When a target is sighted, they dive bill first into the water, submerging completely while snapping up prey. Some people suggest that this action stuns the fish, but the action is so quick, I doubt that it gives fish time to react. They pierce the water at 40 miles or 65 kilometers an hour and can reach a depth of 30 feet or 9 meters. Still, there's a bit more to it. Firstly, they don't always need to go up so high. There are times when there are large schools of fish that are passing by, and browns will fly only about 20 feet above the surface before diving. This is very effective since they dive, scoop, flush the water, swallow the fish, and then take off immediately to do it over and over. Secondly, there's one other fascinating aspect of their technique that few people notice when watching them in nature. As you can see in this series of photos I took in Sarasota, the pelican is diving with the top of the head facing to my left. Now, look at its position as it reaches the water. It's twisted around 90 degrees at the last moment, so the top of the head is now facing me. So what gives? Well, you might guess that hitting the water at 40 miles per hour many times a day will take a toll on the body. Obviously, the bill functions like a human diver's hands to break through the surface tension, but there's still 10 pounds of bird right behind. This is where that rotation, always to the left, comes into play. A pelican's esophagus and trachea are located on the right side of the bird's neck, and the counterclockwise rotation means the left side will absorb the blow and protect the all-important parts of the throat. They also have air sacs beneath the skin on their breasts that cushion the impact, and they learn to dive at a very steep angle, with more practiced birds striking the water at 80 to 90 degrees. Once again, just like a human diver. There's one more aspect that helps white and brown pelicans. Like many animals, they have what is commonly known as a third eyelid. Also known as a nictitating membrane, it's a nearly transparent eyelid that is drawn across the eye for protection while maintaining vision. The word comes from the Latin nictare, meaning to blink. Unlike the other eyelids, the nictitating membrane moves horizontally across the eye. While nictitating membranes have a number of functions in various animals, in pelicans it both protects the eye during impact with the water and allows them to see underwater. It's now pretty obvious as to why the pelican is a popular animal in the state. It's large, hangs out in flocks, has that unique pouch, and has a dramatic feeding process. At least the browns do. There's just a couple more points along the same line. One is that due to their size and social behavior, they tend to be pretty comfortable around humans, especially ones who fish. Pelicans are opportunists and long ago realized that humans can be useful in getting food. They're anxious to get the leftovers after fish have been cleaned on piers, plus they're not above stealing fish from humans who are inattentive. That being said, pelicans aren't annoying the way that seagulls can be. The final aspect is common to most larger birds, how they move on land. They're pretty ungainly to the point of being comical when they walk. Not much needs to be said about it. It's an evolutionary compromise that flying birds had to make. If you want to see graceful running birds, I'd suggest you look at ostriches, emus, and rheas, who evolved into two-legged speed demons. Ostriches can run as quickly as brown pelicans dive. Now I'm going to move on to pelican aspects of Florida. The first is one of the many federally owned properties in the state. Florida has large areas of federally protected land. There are 3 national parks, including the Everglades, the largest located east of the Mississippi River. There are also 29 national wildlife refuges, or NWRs, in the state. They're managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. One is the Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge. Located off North Hutchinson Island near Sebastian, Pelican Island is a small, triangular island of 3 acres or about 12,000 square meters in the Indian River Lagoon. The NWR includes 5,400 acres of other protected lands. In the late 19th century, Florida's birds were being hunted to extinction simply to collect feathers for ladies' hats. Pelican Island was one of the sites most affected by the hunting of egrets, herons, and roseate spoonbills. Frank Chapman, curator of the American Museum of Natural History, was one of several conservationists who visited the area. Not only did he see the bird populations were being decimated, he realized that Pelican Island was the site of one of the last rookeries of brown pelicans in the state. 2 conservation organizations, the American Ornithologists Union and the Florida Audubon Society, campaigned to pass legislation for protection of non-game birds. They were able to get a unique bird protection law passed by the Florida legislature in 1901. Meanwhile, Frank Chapman realized that Pelican Island would require more than that, so he visited President Theodore Roosevelt at his home in New York. He persuaded Roosevelt, who was an advocate of conservation, that Pelican Island's protection was vital for thousands of birds, and in 1903, Roosevelt signed an order establishing Pelican Island as the first federal bird reservation. This was the first time that the federal government put land aside specifically for the sake of wildlife, and Pelican Island became the first national wildlife refuge. Today, 200 species of birds can be found in the refuge. Likewise, a number of birds nest in the refuge, including different egrets, herons, brown pelicans, frigate birds, cormorants, anhingas, spoonbill, ibis, and osprey. In winter, Pelican Island is a roosting location for both brown and white pelicans, making it one of the places that the 2 birds can be seen together. Our next pelican-related part of Florida sends us south to the Stewart area. Going back to just after the years when Pelican Island was established, airplanes were starting to fly in various parts of Florida. The Wright brothers' first flight happened in 1903, and in a way that opened the floodgate of designers to developing their own designs. One of those was aviation pioneer Hugh Willoughby. In 1911, he developed a seaplane named the Pelican, and today there's a full-scale model of the Pelican in the Elliott Museum near Stewart, along with many of his personal belongings. Willoughby was born in 1856 in Middletown, New York. He graduated from the University of Pennsylvania and the U.S. Naval War College. He went on to explore all sorts of technological fields. For instance, he set a record by racing a car from Philadelphia to Newport, Rhode Island. In the 1890s, he created airplane models inspired by birds and piloted a balloon at the 1900 Paris Exposition. In 1894, he moved to Florida. He bought land in Stewart from Henry Sewell, namesake of Sewell's Point. Willoughby built Mandalay, an estate which he used during the winter when he was not up in Newport. Not long after, he decided to explore the Everglades, a place where no one other than Seminoles would go at the time. With the aid of the Seminole tribe, he paddled a canoe on a trip that took 15 days. He recounted that journey in his book, Across the Everglades, A Canoe Journey of the Expedition, the first book to detail that wilderness. Through his interests in airplanes, he became friends with the Wright brothers and learned from their experiments and worked with them in the years after the first flight. He went on to develop planes, with the first one done in 1909. In 1911, Willoughby completed the construction of one of his most interesting inventions, the Pelican hydroplane. Today, they're known as seaplanes, and he was one of the original developers of the concept. An airplane that can take off and land on the water. This faithful reproduction shows just how remarkable it was. Mostly built of wood with fabric wings, it had to be light so that the 40 horsepower engine could get it in the air. Test runs took place in Rhode Island as well as Sewell's Point. While the Pelican was never put into production, Willoughby's designs were used by others to build commercially successful aircraft. Interestingly, he was 53 when he first got his pilot license. That may sound surprising, but it happened in 1909, just 6 years after the first flight, and the same year he built his first plane. Willoughby lived for 30 years more, dying at the age of 83 in his home in Sewell's Point. Those 30 years saw him develop even more planes and more inventions, and the entire time he remained America's oldest licensed pilot. His life was filled with innovation and adventure, having been an integral part of developing human flight. This is Lucy and Ricky. They're both beautiful pelicans, and I hope you can tell that they're neither brown nor white pelicans. In fact, these are two great white pelicans, a different species, one native to Africa and Eurasia. Lucy and Ricky are residents of the Clearwater Marine Aquarium, and while they represent a non-native species, they also represent Florida pelicans because, believe it or not, they're movie stars. Both played Rufus in the movies Dolphin Tale and Dolphin Tale 2. And lest you think that's not particularly impressive, they were part of a cast that included Harry Connick Jr., Ashley Judd, Chris Christopherson, and Morgan Freeman. The two movies, which were filmed at the Clearwater Marine Aquarium, earned $154 million. They tell the story of two of the aquarium's rescued dolphins, Winter and Hope, and provided a dramatic look at the world of wild animal rescues in Florida. Every year, Florida's aquariums, zoos, and rescue organizations assist the government in rescuing and rehabilitating hundreds of animals, such as dolphins, pilot whales, sea turtles, bald eagles, and manatees. The work is funded by the zoos and aquariums themselves, not by government agencies. For more information on that, take a look at this video on the Audubon Center for Birds of Prey and the invaluable work they do with raptors. But getting back to Lucy and Ricky, they were part of the animal menagerie of the Clearwater Marine Aquarium before the movies were written, and because of their interesting behavior, a role was created for them in the movies.
Is there something under there? What is that? No idea. Oh, my gosh. Here, get it set up. Oh, it's all taken up. Hey. Rufus, cut it out, Rufus. Oh, no. Go away, stop it. Go away. Please, will you get him, please? I will. Okay, easy. Okay. Whoa. Okay. Just go. Good. No. Right. Sorry. Good. No, hey. Don't do it. I got him. Just go. Hey. Rufus. Crazy bird.
Now I'd like to briefly mention where I got some of these photos. I was out at Sebastian Inlet because the mullet were running. There also happened to be a storm offshore, so it was an interesting day. Sustained winds of 38 miles or 48 kilometers an hour and sea spray constantly hitting my camera lens. A mullet run is a sight to see. It happens every October on both coasts, but there's actually a couple different runs. One is composed of fingerling silver mullet, ones that are about 4 inches or 10 centimeters and just a few months old. They're moving in large masses from the ocean into the estuaries, since mullet are the opposite of fish such as salmon. Mullet live in fresh waters but spawn in salt, so the fingerlings are headed to where they hope to live for a number of years. Passing through inlets, they appear as thick, dark waves of fish and are usually fleeing tarpon, sharks, and bluefish. The other run often intersects with that of the silvers. Striped mullet, mature at 10 inches or 25 centimeters, move seaward in the fall. Leaving the rivers, they spawn offshore between October and December, returning to freshwater afterwards. Apart from predator fish going after the mullet, you'll see a lot of birds working the water. Brown pelicans, as you can see, are particularly numerous, and on this day they were having a lot of fun with the stiff breeze, something they can do better because of their size. The final part of this video is back to the old postcards. There's a number of them that have a limerick on them. What's funny is that as far as I know, these postcards that combine pelicans and limericks are the only ones sort of like them. There are postcards that have limericks, but none connected with other animals, at least in connection with Florida. I've seen a couple of these that are marked as greetings from California on them, but other than that, they are unique. And what's particularly interesting is that it's not just one postcard that was often reprinted. There are variations of the limerick, variations of the image, completely different images, and even a completely different limerick. They also date between 1913 and 1970. One thing for sure, that shows that the postcard continued to be a popular seller for many years. Yet again proof that the pelican is Florida's popular and peculiar bird. So as for the question, what's the last dinosaur that's shown in the 1993 Jurassic Park movie? Did you figure it out? So I hope you enjoyed that look at Florida's pelicans and can see why they're such a popular animal. I really enjoy watching and photographing them, and it was terrific having a white pelican visit the lake. There's nothing better than getting video content so close to home. Thank you for watching another of my videos. I hope you enjoyed it. If you learned something, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more on Florida tourism history. Stingray Tom's Florida, traveling through time around the Sunshine State.